Well, hello, weary traveler. It's been a while, hasn't it? I am back with yet another painting video. Today, we are going to be painting treasure chests. However, this one comes with a little unnecessary challenge in which I'm only giving myself 1 hour of painting time per treasure chest. Why I do this to myself, I have no idea, but let's just say it's in the name of personal development. I will also preface this by saying I did not paint these in 5 consecutive hours in one day. They were painted individually over the course of a few weeks. And I swear, every time I got a chance to actually sit down and paint one of these, I had a completely different set of nail polish on, so you'll probably notice a switch up here and there. So let's kick it off strong and start with the Cyclops chest. This one I wanted to make grungy and to have an old school D&D feel. I'll be walking you through one of my favorite techniques on how to paint realistic stone. It's definitely one of those trust the process kind of moments where you're starting with bright rustic colors and building up darker layers. As you can see here, I'm using a light cream, bright orange, and a deep yellow, and haphazardly putting splotches of color where I intend for my stone to be. It's important not to blend these colors together too much, or else you'll just get a muddy brown everywhere. Now it may seem counterintuitive to cover up our previous layer with a stippling of plain dark gray, but essentially we just want that color layer barely peeking through in the end. Now we will be repeating the same exact stippling process with a lighter gray. We want it to look as grainy and as stony as possible. For our last layer of stippling, we are going to take our lightest gray and be very generous with the amount we use. We want to see the most of this light gray on the surface and the least of our original orange/yellow layer. So now it's looking as though the chest was carved from stone. So it's time to move on to the rest of the chest, including the metal hardware and of course the Cyclops head. To make the metal look a bit more grungy and worn, I'm using a wash of black paint to let it seep into any recessed areas. Starting with the darkest brown I have, I want to place this entirely on the Cyclops' head. This color will act as our base for shadows, and we will be able to add our highlights on top. For highlights, I'm just going over the high points of the Cyclops' head with a lighter color to accentuate the wrinkles on his face and forehead. Now I wanted his eyeball to appear kind of milky and clouded, as though he were blind, so I went in with a light bluish gray and centered the color where his pupil should be. Next, it was time to bring out his tusks and teeth using an off-white cream color. When painting bone, choosing a cream or a pale yellow paint instead of white gives it a more realistic look. Last step is to paint the remaining amount of chain and hardware on the chest, then it's time for the reveal. Honestly, I'm so happy with how this one turned out. I have to admit, I was rushing the clock a little bit on this one. I only had 4.5 minutes to spare before my hour time limit was up, but I think I managed to get that grungy D&D vibe across. For the second chest, I knew what I wanted to do right away. I'm thinking jewel tones, rich purples and blues, and of course a bright gold to finish it off. We are going to be doing a little bit of an ombre effect here, with a light purple in the middle, blending into a pigmented blue, and then finally into a deep dark purple. We're going to duplicate this blended color scheme for each panel around the bottom of the chest. For the top of the chest, we're going to do the same exact ombre effect, but with different colors. I chose a very light pastel blue and our same light purple we used for the bottom of the chest. Now the design on the chest is getting a little hidden beneath the layers we did, so to bring them back out again, I am doing a heavy wash of purple tone all over. I want this wash to seep into any recessed areas in the design. Going back in with that pastel blue, I'm painting over all of the scarab beetles on the chest to make a nice base for more colored washes. So scarab beetles usually have an iridescent blue-green shine to their shells, so to replicate that I'm using two contrast paints, one neon green and one dark green. Normally I would use plenty additional colors to make it more realistic, but in the interest of time I'm sticking to only two. I'll be carrying these colors onto part of the wing design on the chest as well. Now onto my favorite part. We're going to be painting all of the remaining details in this beautiful gold. Retributor Armour by Citadel Paints is my go-to gold. It's colorful, it's shiny, and I think it turned out great. With all the detail it had, surprisingly I had about 15 minutes to spare from my hour. This one is a hefty contender for being my favorite out of the 5 treasure chests. Next up, we have the werewolf chest. I wanted this one to be dark and spooky, and even though it's werewolf themed, I wanted it to have a sort of vampiric look. I painted my nails black and red, so why not keep the theme going? Starting off with the bright blood red, I'm going to be doing a similar ombre effect like we did for the last chest, and blending the red into black on each and every panel of the chest, making sure to leave the majority of the wolf head untouched. We are going to save that part for later. With all the panels painted, we're going in with a generous amount of dark tone wash and covering the entire chest, making sure to let it seep into any recessed areas. Just so this wash doesn't take 5 million years to dry and cut into my hour time limit, I am gently patting off any excess with a paper towel. Going in with yet another one of my favorite metallic Citadel paints, I will be painting the entirety of the chest border, filigree design, as well as the wolf's head. This part probably took me the longest to get everything as precise as possible while also trying to beat the clock. Even though the metal was looking super pretty and shiny at this stage, it still seemed a little flat. With a lighter metallic, I decided to dry brush over everything I did in the last step to get those high points to pop, and then added another dark wash over the wolf's head to create a sense of shadow. And here it is! This chest is definitely going to put a curse on whoever decides to pry it open. I even added a little bit of fake blood around the eyes and mouth to give it a little gore. It's definitely meeting that vampiric, spooky vibe I intended for it. For the fourth chest, I wanted to switch things up and make a treasure chest that looked like it had been found in the Arctic. Not to give any spoilers or anything, but this one turned out to be my favorite of the bunch, and surprisingly the quickest to paint. Starting off with a very light blue-gray paint, I'm going over any places that look like they have a wood texture. This is going to serve as our base layer for a few washes. For the washes, we're going to be using a dark blue as well as a light sky blue. The lighter blue will be focused to the middle of the chest, and the dark blue will be more for around the edges. With a touch of white, I will be dry brushing over the last layer to pop out some highlights. With a light turquoisey blue, I will be painting over the Celtic knot designs on the chest, as well as the handles on the side. Now it's time to add some metallic, and what better to match with our blues than a nice light silver. This will be used to cover all of the space where our metal hardware would be. For the gem in the middle, I added a smidge of Soulstone Blue technical paint and some of the silver we used previously. I wanted it to seem as though it would glow in low light. For the ice crystals shooting out of the chest, I painted them a deep blue at the bottom and slowly transitioned to a lighter blue towards the top. As you can tell, I love my ombre effects. Once completed, I'm going back in with silver to highlight the edges of each crystal. I want the highlights to look as shiny as the metal hardware on the chest. Now, the metal wasn't looking quite blue enough for me, so I'm going back over all of the silver paint with a light layer of Soulstone Blue. I want this chest looking as icy and frosty as possible. We are finally to the best part, adding in the snow. As you know, I'm a die-hard Citadel paint fan, so I just had to use Valhallan Blizzard for my snow effect. With my dry brush, I'm just packing this on in any crevices it will stick. When I say I am obsessed with how this turned out, I am obsessed. It looks like it was pulled from the bottom of an enchanted icy lake. Time-wise, this one took me the full hour because I kept fiddling with the snow, but I would say it was all worth it. Finally, we have made it to the very last chest in the series. This one, I wanted to do a fun sort of circus theme with bright pinks, greens, and golds. I am starting off with a dark pink and painting each individual panel on the top of the chest and carrying this color onto the side panels of the chest. Not to worry about how dark it looks, we will be blending a lighter pink on top. For the border, I'm using a bright sunflower yellow on both the bottom and the top of the chest. Using a light blue wash, I will be adding little speckled polka dots on top of the yellow layer we did. In hindsight, I wish I never did this step because on my time crunch, I wasn't as precise with the speckling as I should have been, but such is life, you make mistakes. Using a purple wash, I'm going over all of the pink and yellow areas and letting this wash seep into any recessed areas. Yes, of course, I'm whipping out my favorite gold again and painting the entire border of the chest and any areas I want to appear as though they are metal. Now it's time to pay attention to the little elephants on the corners. I'll be doing a base color of dark gray, adding a lighter gray to the high points of the elephant's face and trunk, and throwing in a touch of pink on the ears. For the rest, you'll have to see it in the final reveal. And here we have it, the last treasure chest of the 5. I'm not 100% sure I accomplished the circus color scheme I was envisioning, but that's my fault for not going in with a solid plan. But let's be honest, I do all of my painting without planning in advance. Overall, this was a great painting experience and an even better challenge. I've always considered myself a quick painter, but racing the clock for these really pushed my time management skills to the limit. I am so happy with how these turned out and can't wait to display them on my miniature shelf. I would love to hear which treasure chest was your favorite out of the bunch. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey, and I'll see you next time, Traveler.